Another day, another rousing discussion of sexism in gaming, this time coming from a segment of the recently rebooted X-Play show on G4TV, that channel we used to watch as teens back when the PS3 was brand new. The segment in question is called Grievances in Gaming, which you already just know preemptively from the title is going to be a breeding ground for socio-political diatribes, and we sure got one from Frosk, the new host, current Twitch streamer, and former League of Legends broadcaster, who went on a tirade about how people react to her reading reviews versus Adam Sessler, the original big host of X-Play from back in the day, who used to be the lifeblood of the previous show, but is now apparently back in some supporting capacity. Frosk also aired grievances in titular fashion about how people seem to treat her worse than how they treated prior female G4 hosts Morgan Webb and Olivia Munn because they were, in her words, more bangable than her. And in her defense, that is true. They are. But we're getting ahead of ourselves, and I think the best way to handle this topic is to go through the 4-minute rant piece by piece and objectify its contents, decide which arguments are bangable and which ones we would not jerk off to, and rate her overall presentation out of 10 and decide if we should send her a thirsty DM. I spent way more time watching this video than I wanted to, but here we go. Frosk starts with the title of her essay, which is basically what it is since she's reading off a teleprompter. Not knocking it, because I also do that, and I'm doing it right now, in fact, except it's just an open document on my computer. But anyway, sexism in gaming. One chick in the crowd immediately claps and cheers, unclear if she's for or against it. Either way, it succeeds in delaying the momentum and is already annoying. Frosk is sitting between two male hosts, and Adam Sessler is over to the side on a Zoom screen or something. Don't know if he's a COVID freak or was just elsewhere that day, but he looks like he's in a home studio setup, and these three hosts are all maskless right next to each other, so maybe he was terrified of Omicron's double-digit death rate. She goes on to say that she was excited to be the host of a show she grew up watching, but remarks about the inevitable backlash she can see about her being, quote, not as bangable as the previous host. Right when she says that, the guy to her left goes, woo, like he agrees with that statement. She's like, I'm not as bangable as the previous host. And he's like, yeah, you tell him. I thought that was funny. She says, it's somehow become expected, I think she meant to say accepted, that you can talk about how much you jerk off to women as a compliment. It's not a compliment. I mean, it is, factually. You don't have to like it, but it is literally an admission of appreciation for a woman's face and or body. Saying you commit an act that you would only do if you were attracted to them is by definition a compliment. Now, is it weird if randos say this to public figures in comment sections? Kind of. It's not like it's gonna work out for them, but it's really just a more obscene version of people talking about their tastes in women, and if you think that's gross, you are correct, but it's still a compliment. Not one I imagine Frost gets very often, by her own admission, but a compliment. And by the way, just to paint a picture if you don't know what she looks like, Frost has a Minotaur nose ring, short, scraggly anime boy blonde hair, and in this video she's dressed like Ash Ketchum without the hat. However, if she were to grow her hair out, or at least style it differently, and give the One Ring to Frodo, she has an alright face and she's thin, so potential exists to get less of those comments if the goal was to curtail those comments. But she has a personal style she's into that she's chosen for herself instead of adhering to more traditional standards, which makes complaining about them seem pointless. Like, you don't want to be bangable for that crowd anyway. Frosk continues with her point. Women do not exist to be nice on the eyes for you. Morgan Webb, Olivia Munn did not exist to be nice on the eyes for you. True, but they were anyway, and you're being disingenuous if you think that's not an added bonus. Also, G4 literally sexualized the hell out of both those women back in the day for different skits. Olivia Munn wore a Japanese schoolgirl outfit on set, threw her panties into a panty pile with a sign that said Olivia's panty pile, and both her and Morgan Webb were in bikinis on magazine covers during that time, which I doubt they were forced to do under the yoke of oppressive sexism. There's just always an air in these arguments of you only get to think we're hot or talk about us being hot when we want you to, and that is a crock of shit. Frosk says, you do not need to explicitly objectify women or declare that you hate women to be sexist. Also true. You can be sexist by auto-devaluing a woman's opinion or assuming they don't know shit about games, which you may argue is statistically a safe bet overall given the amount of men versus women in games, and you'd be right, but then people still do that shit to girls who are verifiably engrossed in the gaming sphere, and that's where you need to start checking yourself. All I know about Frosk's gaming history is that she's big into League of Legends, but there's no reason to assume she doesn't play anything else because she's a G4TV host and not just every girl on Tinder. The next point she goes on to make is important and highlights something I've talked about before about how the reviews that they do on the show are a team effort, mostly written by writers, and when the hosts are performing a review, which is the right word, they're mostly not reading stuff they actually wrote. And this is brought up as a defense to personal attacks on the hosts for stating opinions that aren't even really theirs to begin with. If someone's like, how dare you say Metroid Dread is mediocre, then a host under this pretext would be able to say, I don't necessarily think think that, it's just what was written for me to say. And a bunch of non-independent review sites do this. They have someone read the review who didn't write the review, and it sounds like they didn't write the review. And whenever they use language like we to represent the team, but it's just one person speaking, I'm always like, bro, speak for yourself. Reviews are personal to the individual. So what happens when you give the host this excuse is you actually just highlight the disingenuousness of the review. When people read a review they didn't write, I don't believe in it. And maybe you don't have time to solo a review, although that makes no sense, because if a team reviews a game, the entire team has to have finished the game to give their final thoughts on it, which doesn't happen any faster than one person finishing the game. Or do you start 4 people off at 4 different sections of the game and then complete a review jigsaw style with everyone's broken thoughts? Here's Frosk's main point with it, though. This is the crux example of sexism as she sees it. Adam will read a script written by the same writer that I will read the other half of the script for, and I will be the one flamed. Well, what's in your half versus his half? How are the reviews structured? Are you both giving equal amounts of criticism versus praise? Did you happen to be the one unlucky enough to read the writer's more contestable points? Or is Adam better at making reviews sound genuine and getting the point across because he's been doing it decades longer than you? All legitimate questions, but the simple answer is sexism, and people on Twitter love simple answers. She goes on to say that it happens to her male co-hosts too, because anyone who's not Adam Sessler will get flamed for not being Adam Sessler, but when it happens to her, it's also sexist because she said so. Then she says their production team is half women, like that's something to be intrinsically proud of. Congratulations on hiring people directly because of their gender and filling a diversity quota. Nice achievement, bro. And then the part I really like is she names a bunch of them. She's like, Emily, Abby, Megan, Joe, Jake, Zipper, Gabby. First of all, what girl is named Jake? You've got a dude in disguise back there. My man saw the quota and said, shit, I'm a woman now. It's also easy to remember people's names when you read them off of teleprompters. This doesn't make for much of a human moment either. And it's just their first name, so the shout-out ain't even giving them a career boost. Frosk continues on retreading some previous points that are just as contestable as ever. They're supposedly sexist, but can also be boiled down to she's not Adam Sessler, and it's also worth mentioning that if you hear her speak, some of this will make immediate sense to you. Remember when I said she was dressed like Ash Ketchum? She also sounds like Ash Ketchum, like halfway between original Ash Ketchum and new Ash Ketchum. So it is very possible that a decent amount of people just do not enjoy hearing her say words into a microphone, which is perfectly valid. And this is a criticism I would not have levied to Morgan Webb or Olivia Munn. I thought Morgan Webb in particular was nice to listen to, so sexism plays no part in it. She then accuses people's unconscious biases of gatekeeping the gaming space, which is somewhat accurate except for the unconscious part. She specifically mentions people who feel like she's not qualified to speak on a game, but can't quite put their finger on why, and then the implication is obviously, oh, it's because they hate women, duh. If anybody said she's unqualified to speak on a game, that is either very conscious sexism, nothing about it, or they're picking up on that disingenuousness from before if she's reading reviews she didn't write, or maybe she's mispronounced something or said something inaccurate, which people in the replies to this video are calling her out for since she apparently said some factually inaccurate statements about gaming news. But she apologized on Twitter for that aspect of it at least, and has stated that the rant was not in reference to any of that part. Frosk's rant is reaching its closing argument at this point, and we get to the part where we say we're making free content, and if you don't like it, don't watch it, to which loads of people are like, alright, bet. And then if G4's viewership drops after a year, they'll be like, what could have caused this? Was it the hatred of women? I agree with not watching things you don't like. I'll say that up front. Hate watching is a toxic habit. But I'll be damned if it's an excuse to shut down criticism. We don't do that shit out here. We got a decent Sonic movie because of criticism. We got a blue hedgehog that was adequately designed because of criticism. Everyone remembers that, and it's a golden case study for how mass public criticism can change art, or a corporation, or a community for the better. I see people who don't work at Activision criticizing Activision for their treatment of female employees. If you don't like it, don't work there, bro. Why chime in just to hate? That's not constructive. And then yeah, it ends with individual cheers from their mostly empty audience, the in-person male hosts clapping, and Adam Sessler clapping like he just saw Martin Luther King hand deliver the I Have a Dream speech. He's always been a particularly progressive wingnut himself, but when he hosted the old show, it was mostly kept out of it so you could separate the art from the artist. I remember Adam Sessler once decried God of War for depicting violence towards women, as if Kratos wasn't beating the shit out of everyone in his way equally. If you want Kratos to treat women equally, you don't tell him to pull his punches. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't like it, don't watch it. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I'll see you guys next time.